Hey, do you remember Meet the Mormons, that feature film documentary series that we all saw in the theaters, and now you can stream it all over the place? Well, Blair Treu was the mind behind that, the director and producer of Meet the Mormons, and he's out with another film very similar to that, same look and feel and experience, and it's called Sharing Aloha. Now, I had the opportunity a few months ago to actually see a screening of Sharing Aloha, and it was fantastic. I cried. Okay. And you're going to cry too when you see this. You've got to see this movie. And I couldn't help but invite Blair into, at least virtually, into the studio here and to talk about this film and some leadership principles that were found therein and what we can learn about the YSA generation, which the stories in this film, Sharing Aloha, focuses on the stories of the Polynesian Cultural Center. Now, I've never had the opportunity yet to attend the Polynesian Cultural Center, but I'm looking forward to it. This movie definitely put it on my bucket list. And those of you who have been to the Polynesian Cultural Center just knows just how impactful it is and the good it is doing. And so I encourage you to see this movie. And I'm excited to interview Blair and talk about some leadership principles that he learned, that he observed, and what he learned about this YSA generation, those students at the Polynesian Cultural Center that are giving so much and focusing on taking their life to that next level. So all the details are in the show notes. Comes out August 29th. This is definitely one we want to promote and share and share the good word of the good that the Polynesian Cultural Center does. So here's my interview with Blair Treu, the director of Sharing Aloha. All right, Blair, welcome to the Leading Saints podcast.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is cool. A few months ago, I had the opportunity to see a screening of this upcoming movie, Sharing Aloha, and really just inspiring some fantastic stories um, in so many angles. How did you how did this project come to be?
Well, I got a call just kind of out of the blue from Randy Rigby, who had been he was a service missionary out there at the Polynesian Cultural Center. He and his wife Sandra, and he just called me out of the blue. I guess he was talking to a lot of different folks about they were trying to put together a kind of a concept for a documentary film. I had been there years before. I've filmed many times at the Polynesian Cultural Center on various projects, and was already kind of enamored with the story of the scene behind the scenes, of what these kids, especially these kids that come from all over the islands and work there, what they go through to get there, to stay there, and to graduate from there. And it's just an amazing story that's never been told. And so it didn't take much. He didn't have to twist my arm too hard to get me to do it. And Randy, he's former president of the Utah Jazz and is a great guy, just a great guy to work with. And so he took on the role of executive producer and then hired me to come out and kind of explore the idea. And we batted a few things around. We just felt like at the heart of the story had to be the students. You've got the incredible story of the symbiotic relationship that exists between the Polynesian Cultural Center and BYU-Hawaii. Kids go there, or their PCC exists just to provide an opportunity for these kids to be employed, so they graduate debt free. So it's a great symbiotic relationship that exists, but then there's a backstory behind that.
Yeah.
So just we both mutually agree that that's really the story we should explore.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those projects. Probably, that you didn't have to think too hard as far as to find the stories or what angle this. I mean, the stories are just there, and it's just a matter of recording them.
It's true. There's no shortage of stories. The difficult part was deciding which stories not to tell. These kids all have different situations that they come in from. Most of them have that commonality of being from less than desirable circumstances from an economic standpoint, and they need help financially. They've got great heart. These are valiant kids, so they've got that going for them. And many of them are returned missionaries, as well. But they just don't have the means to go to a 4-year university. And so that's where these guys fill that need, especially for kids who live all throughout the Pacific Rim, So
Yeah.
it's a great opportunity.
Now, this audience is probably familiar with many of your projects you've done in the past. Maybe rattle off some of those and help you put you further in the context.
Well, in kind of the religious sector, I've been fortunate throughout my career to be able to work with Disney and a lot of different entities down in Hollywood. But in between those, I had a chance and wanted to stay close with those who were producing the church media throughout the years. And so I've been involved with on the church front from the early days, at least my early days, back starting at about mid 90s. No, I'm sorry, mid 80s. Early seminary films and Call to Serve was one of my first documentaries for the church many, many years ago. Then there were dozens and dozens of films that, if you might have suffered through in seminary, I don't know. I only made the good ones though, just so you know.
That's right. That's right. I bet.
So we did those. And then I think the ones that are more noteworthy or have a little bit more following would be probably Meet the Mormons about 10 years ago. Had a chance to produce and direct that. My producing partner on that was Jeff Roberts, great guy. And and that, so some of your viewers may be familiar with that film. It was initially designed for Legacy Theater, and then it tested so well with audiences, they decided to take it out theatrically. And so it went from a projected audience of maybe a few 100,000 to many, many millions. And because it had a successful theatrical run, it then went through Netflix and Hulu and went through all the streamers. And so that's one that's of note that people might remember. And for your, I don't know, in your audience, for those who are recently returned missionaries, there was a little project I did that I'm really proud of. It's called The Safety Zone. We took a very dry topic of missionary safety, and we turned it into a kind of an ESPN style talk show format, sports, where the hosts banter back and forth and they show replays and they argue about what's right, and they replay stuff. And we thought this would be a way to talk about missionary safety. Yeah. And it sounds really boring, but it stuck with the missionaries, and I've seen parodies made on it. And that means that it's sticky, that they're remembering it.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of it just because we've seen a significant reduction of accidents, bicycle and pedestrian and car and dysentery and all the things, and deaths as well. So so the Safety Zone is one that is still out playing for missionaries. And then on the non-religion, there's secular and non-secular. The stuff I did for Disney back in the day there was some Disney Channel movies. Your audience, probably have to be in their 30s, late 20s, 30s to remember these, but Paper Brigade or Wish Upon a Star, Phantom of the Megaplex was another one. There was a whole host there were 5 or 6 others, and then on the television front, for those who have kids that watch Power Rangers or Ninja Turtles, the live action stuff, I even did that. So it's kind of cool. A contrast. You work with, one week you're working with a brethren who I really respect and admire, and then I'm over on the television side doing Power Rangers. This is many, many years ago. I needed the rent money. Okay, I was just starting. So,
Sure.
So don't judge me.
No, I don't blame you at all. I mean, I remember as a young kid, the Power Rangers were quite the focus for me. So that's awesome. That's
and you
cool.
Turned out okay.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I'm a contributing member of society. So that's awesome. And so as you, with this project, with the, basically it's based around telling the stories of the Polynesian Cultural Center, which is I don't know the best way to frame it, but it's a church-owned, almost theme park type of experience. I've never been there personally yet. I look forward to the opportunity to go. And I did. It was fun to see your film from that angle, where I didn't necessarily have a prior context to put it all in, but I was like, it made me even more excited to attend attend there, because there's so many stories to tell. Did you feel a responsibility to go into the deep history of the Polynesian Cultural Center as well, or you just want to get to the stories?
At first I did, because it has an amazing history. Yeah. However, that's really a different film. And that story may be told at some point. It's kind of been told loosely in various forms, short and long, but the history is so rich, we just decided it either has to be a historical piece or it really has to be something that's contemporary right in the here and now. And so we decided to focus on that. And we don't really get too much into the history of the PCC. it was a swampland, and they had to drain it. And I mean, where have we seen that theme occur before in church history, right?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
used to have, it was a dirt road that ran all the way out around that side of the North Shore in Laie, and they had to wave guests in, and they used to have these big hukilaus where they would throw the big nets out, and they'd have the tourists come in and throw in a couple of bucks, and they could go out and stand with the locals and pull in the nets. The hukilau song that maybe you haven't heard that, but anyway, they throw out these nets and bring in these fish, and that was the way they got tourists out to that side of the island and made a little bit of money. But they used to have to wave people in off the highway, and
Oh,
so it's
wow.
gone from that to Hawaii's most popular paid attraction. You have a million visitors a year. They employ about 800 students every semester, and there have been tens of thousands that have gone through that program in the last 60. They turned 60 last year, so it has quite an amazing history. We decided to really make the focus of this film on the students themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I'm just curious, what comes to mind as far as what did you learn about that demographic? That typically you refer to it as the YSA demographic, and I think the vast majority of these stories were YSA. I mean, these are students at BYU-Hawaii that
Yes.
they can, correct me if I'm wrong, but audition to be a part of the cast or part of just the function of the Polynesian Cultural Center, and that helps them, get through college and graduate debt free. What comes to mind as you were learning about this demographic that you were telling the stories about?
Well, there's a whole host of things. The first thing on a personal level that I had to get used to is um, coming from a production background in feature film and television as well as documentary. You have only so much resource and so much time.
Yeah.
So it's all about, hey, let's keep this thing moving along. To make matters worse, I'm German. Okay. So I'm a very, you have to get things done. That goes contrary to the vibe in the islands. There's island time is very real.
Hmm.
And so on a personal level, I had to learn to just kind of like, and I don't know that I actually got there, but I towards the end, I realized, look, you can't force things. You have to let things just kind of happen. And I learned that if I was going to be authentic to these stories, I had to just be able to go with it. If the kids showed up for their interviews or their allotted time, or they didn't, I just had to go with it. And sometimes I
Yeah.
had to go to their dorms to run them down and say, hey, remember, we've got this interview scheduled with you and we want to follow you around in class and whatnot. So from a personal standpoint, that was an adjustment for me. But I really came to love these kids because they're so genuine. They're so earnest, and um, they come from deeply rooted family backgrounds. Not to say that the kids on the Wasatch Front or the kids in Southern California don't, but in the Polynesian culture, family is everything, and family, everybody's related to everybody, and so it doesn't take long to see how everybody's connected in one way or another to somebody else, and so it was really great to see for me kind of that kind of a throwback or revival to what family really can mean to community.
Yeah.
And so that was
Yeah.
that was a real, and we had a chance, in the film. You remember if you saw it, we had a chance. I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it, but I'll say this much: we had a chance to go back to the communities where some of these kids come from,
Yeah.
and we even had to cut a bunch out because there just wasn't time. And so I won't say much more than that, but it was really great to go back and see where they come from, to see their upbringing, that they worked on these family plantations and farms, and they, if one hurts, they all hurt. If one succeeds, they all succeed. And so it's a very selfless as opposed to selfish lifestyle.
Yeah.
So it was great to see that. It was great to just be reminded of that. And in many ways, it reminded me of my own family, but it's kind of my own family on steroids. Okay, because it
Yeah.
just goes out into the community.
Yeah.
That was something that struck me. I don't know if that answered your question, but that's something that really, and I think everybody who's been to the Polynesian Cultural Center, who's spent any time in Polynesia, knows that family is everything.
Yes.
That is everything.
Yeah. And I think just in our Latter-day Saint culture, the Polynesian demographic has been such a highlight of our tradition and our culture. I mean, anywhere you go, I remember I served in Sacramento, California on my mission. And even there, we had Tongan speaking missionaries, or, there were various Polynesian wards or branches. And, obviously in Utah, I grew up in West Valley City. We had a huge contingent of Polynesians there. And so it seems like anywhere you go in the church, you just get to experience a little flavor of their culture. And it is so endearing and really inspiring that these are our fellow Latter-day Saints. And this is really a place to go to experience that on so many different levels, right?
Yeah. There were many times where I would jokingly walk up to a cast member, a student. I'm reluctant to say, I shouldn't say cast member because it's not like they have a speaking part,
Yeah.
but we're following them. And I always hold up my arm next to them, and they always look so tan and so, this beautiful skin. And I said, I have brown envy. I want to be like you guys. And that's the way I felt. I just felt like I could be, I would love to be part of this community. And so,
Yeah.
that's the way I had a little bit of envy, through the whole process, that I wanted to be Polynesian.
Yeah. And would you say this is the closest thing, as far as the format and approach, the closest thing you've done since Meet the Mormons? I mean, where you're telling different stories, and this definitely has that kind of feel.
I think so. Yeah. Meet the Mormons. I guess, yeah, it's true in many ways. Meet the Mormons is a collection of there are six stories from around the world. This is a collection of about the handful of stories from kids who come from, one's from Las Vegas, one's from Tonga, one's from Samoa, one's from Fiji, one's from Australia, and I probably missed one in there. So we've got a good representation of a good cross section, just like we did in Meet the Mormons, where we were ethnically diverse and geographically diverse. In this case, we're not so much ethnically diverse, but we're geographically diverse.
Yeah.
And you brought up an interesting point. Do they actually audition and whatnot? We focused, on the film, we're focusing a lot on the night show and the performance-related jobs, but the night show really is just a fraction of what is there. So from other areas, like throughout the Pacific Rim, you have Japanese students, Filipinos, some Chinese. They tend to work more in the food services sector within the Polynesian Cultural Center. So, and you also have, white kids, haoles like me, who also work, and the tour guides take all kinds. So they do try to, in the villages, there's 6 villages. Like in the Samoa village, they try to have kids where they can, from Samoa, work in the Samoa village. Same thing with Fiji and Tahiti and so on and so forth, and Hawaii. And so they really do try to be very specific there. But when it comes to all the other jobs, whether they're grounds crew or food services or meal preparation or cleanup or whatever, they take kids from all over the place. So there is, within that little culture of the Polynesian Cultural Center, you've got kind of a real melting pot.
Yeah. Yeah. And so is this, people may wonder, is BYU, the Polynesian Cultural Center, behind this, or this was an independently funded film and to tell the story?
Yeah. So as I understand it, it was supported by the PCC, funded through private donations, through private funds.
Mm-hmm.
And the PCC, I don't know a lot of the details about how that came to be. And for me, the important thing was that, typically, just from a financial standpoint, the movies that I make the lion's share of my money on the back end when the movie sells, when it goes out
Yeah.
and people buy tickets. But I'll just say this because, and there's a reason. I'm not saying this for my own personal aggrandizement, but I didn't want to do that on this film.
Hmm.
I wanted to donate that back to the PCC because I felt like it would be hypocritical for me to say to people, hey, go see this movie, because all the proceeds go back to PCC, if I wasn't donating my part.
Yeah.
And so I was paid to make the movie, for sure, and everybody who worked on the film were paid an adequate amount, to work on it.
Sure.
Nobody got rich on it, but so it was labor of love. But I make that point because for those that are going to see it on in the theaters, uh, every dime goes back to the PCC, and it funds the iWork scholarship program, which helps these kids. And it also is going to encourage people, like you said at the beginning of the podcast, you had not been there, but it makes you kind of want to go there.
Yeah.
We want that to occur as well. We hope that it
Yeah.
increases the attendance. Their attendance has really been pretty good throughout the years, but we want to keep that strong so that it can continue to support these kids uh, from a financial standpoint through
Yeah.
scholarships. And so we're really excited about that. Beyond that, it's just raising awareness for the public at large.
And that was one inspiring thing about these different stories you've touched on a little bit, but just the opportunity it gives to so many. And I love, was it remember, I forget the girl's name, but was she from Tonga? She went back to
Leilani.
yeah. And she got this once in this trip home, that was scholarshiped, and she got to go see her family, and like, just to see how impoverished these humble farmers are, and to think, wow, like, their daughter gets to go to a phenomenal university, participate in a phenomenal, Polynesian Cultural Center, and even her story of serving a mission and going to another mission during COVID and serving even longer. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
it's just so inspiring, and just brought tears to my eyes to see how this impacts so many lives for good, especially those students who, man, now the world is her oyster. There's so much that she'll be able to do.
Yeah, it's really her choice. Back in Tonga, it's an agrarian society. They don't have currency they don't use currency the way we do. It's barter and trade, and I mean, they still use currency, but it's mostly, as I understand it. I mean, I'm no expert here, but as I understand it, if there's something you need from a neighbor and there's something that you have that they need, you just kind of trade and you barter and you work together and you help one another. And
Yeah.
so it really is. I think if the world were to come to an end, some big catastrophe, I think I'd want to be in Tonga, because life would just go on, while the world
Yeah.
around them, completely collapses. Life
Yeah.
would just go on, and at least, in its simplest form, and they grow their own food. And it's great to see somebody living that type of a lifestyle in the here and now.
Yeah, and I appreciate in the film you touch on this sort of the criticism, the unfounded criticism that the Polynesian Cultural Center has received, that some perceive it that students are being exploited to, work in this theme park and, give hours, and just to see just how much of scholarship funds and again, that new next level of opportunity they receive by working at the Culture Center. Just like, I think all of us had all sorts of strange jobs during college just to make it through, and this is great opportunity, where I would guess in Hawaii there's not a ton of college type jobs. Just in general, I think their economy is tricky, and so to have this opportunity, I've really appreciated that you unpack that controversy and put it to rest.
Yeah, it's not a widely held belief, but there are people. And in my experience, because I had to dig, I actually went around, and this little sequence did not end up in the film. So this is an exclusive to your
Oh,
podcast.
love it. We'll take it.
We went around with a hidden camera and asked people all over the island, the North Shore, we went into Waikiki, spent a lot of time in Waikiki and Honolulu, at different places, right on the beachfront and in the malls and in the at the International Center, and we asked them. We posed as tourists, wanting to know, have you guys been to the Polynesian Cultural Center? What do you think of it? What you heard? And we were really trying to, because we had heard these rumors about, they exploit these students, and you don't want to go out there because it's dry. You can't get any alcohol out there, and it's boring, and they enslave these students, and there's this kind of this anti-Mormon rhetoric that goes on. I'd heard about that, and so I thought, okay, well, I'm going to go see if I can exploit that a little bit, see if I can get people to talk about it, and then I will blur their faces and alter their voices so we can use it without their permission. And there were only a few that said anything even remotely bad about it. Mostly what you find are people who've never been there, who've never spent any time there, who have heard something, and then they regurgitate that online. And so you hear these wild comments about the exploitation, and so it's not widely held, but we thought we ought to at least address it because people are curious about it. Uh, exploitation of students. And so that's why we addressed it in the film. But you think about it, these kids, President Coway mentions this in his interview. These kids get a chance to work there, and they get not only the equivalent of a D1 scholarship, before the NIL money kicked in, it was
Right.
the equivalent of a D1 scholarship, full ride, tuition, books, housing, everything. They also get health care. And they also get a little bit of extra cash. I mean, they're not getting rich because it's going to their education, but they've done an internal study, and it's the equivalent of $50 an hour.
Wow.
And so where are you going to find that? You're not going to find that working at the Subway, or you're not going to find that at McDonald's flipping burgers. Nothing against those guys, but it's just no comparison. You get a chance to share your culture. You get a chance to be a missionary and to be out front and to just share your whole belief system with tourists that come through in a non-pushy, non-preachy way. And when compared to the alternative of flipping burgers, there's just no comparison. I don't know what minimum wage is in Hawaii right now. I'm guessing it's probably 16, 17, maybe $18 an hour. I don't know, but it's certainly not anywhere close to 50 in terms of the benefit that they get.
Yeah, that's really cool. Really cool. Another part I really appreciate you include is just all of the, the directors, the production crew, all the, people who've been there for years and years that get a new group of students coming in and get them up to par with their dancing and their production and all that, and just move so many students through to create a really high production performance. What did you notice just about that group as far as how they lead or how they do it so quickly? I'm just thinking of the primary presidents that are listening that do primary programs, or the youth leaders doing treks, or individuals striving to create an experience. What did you learn from that group?
I'll tell you, it is literally a miracle that they can pull this off, because every semester you have pretty significant turnover in the villages and at the night show. And most students work there. They might work in a village for a year or two, so they're multi-semester, or they might work in the night show, or they might jump back and forth. Mm-hmm. Not only that, but within the context of a typical semester, you have a whole bunch of students who might have to miss one particular show because they all have the same class and they've got a final in that class, or they've got some special thing. And so every night it's a struggle to fill those spots on stage. That means that when you audition for the night show, you have to be ready to play as many different parts as possible. And that is brought out in the film, but it's kind of like human Tetris. You have to fit things in and see where you can. And so, to your question, the managers, I spent a lot of time with David Tiavi, who's right there in the front line, and he's dealing on a nightly basis with, okay, who's going to show up tonight and who's not going to be here tonight. And so he has to be able to take somebody who typically works in the Samoan section of the show, and he has to put them over in the Fijian section, maybe. So there's always subbing and there's always substitutes. And so the fact that, in a typical Las Vegas show, or in a New York, in a Broadway show, you've got the lead and you've got an understudy, and you might have two understudies if it's a long running show. Not in this show. You have the leads and they might have 3 or 4 understudies. And so there's constant change out. And so, but I don't know if I answered your question, but I guess these leaders possess, I think what it is it's personal testimony and faith that it's going to work out. And they know why they're there. And they're really serious about wanting this show to be of high quality.
Yeah.
Their goal is always in the 90, 93, 94 percentile. And they take nightly surveys, and they expect those kids to step up and do their part. But there's also a certain compassion that you don't get. If you were in a Hollywood show or a Las Vegas type show, it's just a completely different vibe. They do know that these kids, they can't work more than 19 hours a week, and they cannot, even if they wanted to exploit them, they couldn't, because they know why the kids are there. They're there first and foremost to get an education. And then secondary to that is, hey, let's see if we can put on a really nice show. And so they really are careful with these kids, and it's got to be exasperating. It's got to be a lot like being a mission president. You get these kids that come in the mission field that are going to do their best, but they come at varying levels of maturity, and you just have to love them all and do your best. And I'm sure that that's what they deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's really good. Anything else? I've got a few more kind of semi-related questions to the film, but anything else about the film that you want to make sure you highlight or touch on?
Well, because the proceeds are going back to the PCC, I would just want your audience to understand that when they go to the theater to see it, August 29th is when it comes out in theaters. It's going to be playing. It's kind of it's a little bit in flux right now, but because we're adding theaters and we believe it's going to be released, it's going to be all up and down the Wasatch Front from up north all the way down at St. George and all through the Wasatch Front. It'll be northern Southern California, Arizona, Nevada, Las Vegas, Hawaii. It'll be all over the islands. It'll be in Anchorage, Alaska, of all places. American Samoa, Guam, I believe, and other territories might be added, like Florida, Texas, if it does
Nice.
well that first weekend. And the
Yeah.
reason it's important, there's two reasons. We want people to see it in the theater, because once you see it in the theater, and if it does well at the box office, that triggers the algorithm once it gets to streaming, and we get a higher placement. And with a higher placement, more people see it. When more people see it, more people want to go. And it also makes more money just from more people see it, that makes more money for the Polynesian Cultural Center. So it's kind of a way to double dip, and so when you go see it at the theaters on opening weekend, or maybe the following week, it's only gonna be out for probably a few weeks. You're actually doing more than just going to see a movie. You're benefiting these kids in a very direct way. You're laying down your hard-earned money to go see a movie that I hope is going to be worth your while. It's going to be entertaining, but you're also going to be supporting these kids who come from these tiny islands who don't have a lot of financial resource. And so, if you have that mindset when you go see the movie, that's a good. Go see it because it's entertaining first, but it's also a great cause. So that's what I
Yeah.
would stress. And then when it does come out on streaming, watch it, share it with your friends, and that'll just help keep people going to the PCC so that it can continue year in and year out to help fund the educations of these wonderful students who come from all over the Pacific Rim.
Love it. Love it. Well, we'll definitely include all those links in the show notes and make sure people know where to learn more and to get tickets. So, and again, it's that opening weekend that's so crucial. Um, I, Blair, I want to ask you just from your own leadership, as far as, I mean, running, directing a movie and production, and I mean, it's not, it's no small feat for sure. What advice do you have just from that may translate to church leadership, or inspiring a group of people, or motivating people, or uniting people around a project or a cause? Where do you draw upon to make that happen?
I'll tell you, that's easy. When I did Meet the Mormons, I had the wonderful opportunity to kind of rub shoulders with a number of the brethren, but Elder Holland was so supportive and so loving, and so just, I want to be careful. I'm not like exactly on a first name basis with any of these brethren. Okay. I don't hang out with them. I don't, but there was a period of time where I would see them on a fairly regular basis. But Elder Holland always made me feel like I was on a first name basis, and I would never say Jeff. I would always call him Elder Holland. But in his responses to me, he'd always sign it Jeff. And so I'm kind of taking a page out of his book. He always made me feel important. And he always made everybody on our crew feel important. And he really always behaved in a way that I felt like, gosh, that's the way the Savior would be. If he were here, that's the way he would run things. And so I've tried, and I've probably failed miserably, but I've tried to have people around on crews that know that I appreciate them, that know that I value the jobs that they do, because I get to be out front here and really kind of take the credit, but the credit doesn't belong to me. First of all, any talents that I may have are on loan. They're not mine. Heavenly Father loans those to me, and if I develop them, He helps me to develop those. If I bury it, we knows what happens if we bury those talents. But you can never make a film in a vacuum. You can never make it by yourself. I had a whole staff of people on Meet the Mormons, as on this one, from editors and camera people and sound technicians and composers and musicians who did the soundtrack, who all kind of dedicated their own testimony to the whole experience. And so I think from a leadership standpoint, boy, you have to recognize that people bring to the table their own unique gifts, strengths and weaknesses. And you have to be, if you're not appreciative of that, you don't get the full benefit of what they have to offer. So just like I would bend over backwards, I would charge that hill, and I would be the first one over the hill if President Holland asked me to go, because it's President Holland,
Yeah.
And I would do the same for the others, but with Elder Holland, it was just, he made it so uniquely personal, and he'd look you in the eye, and he would really make you feel appreciated. And so I try to do that with my crew and with the students who are in the film. I try the best I can. I'm nowhere close to Elder Holland's level, but people talk about that all the time back when he was president of BYU, and they just loved working with him because his leadership style was one of, I appreciate you, I love you. And so I think that carries over. You think about, a great bishop or a stake president or a leader, a primary president or an elders quorum. If they are warm to you and they care about you, you'll do anything they ask, because you want to, you're being appreciated. So that jumps out at me.
Cool.
For sure.
That's really helpful. Well, any other story, concept, principle you want to make sure we squeeze in here before we wrap up, or do we get it all?
I think it's really easy for people in the film community to kind of fall into this self-importance mentality.
Uh-huh.
We've been lucky at a few festivals. It's done well, and you see that because you get so involved with trying to promote the film that promoting the film also means you're kind of promoting yourself, and it's easy to get hung up on that. But I guess the thing that I would go back to is that whatever whatever talents we have, they're on loan. They're on loan, and even the weaknesses that we have that are there to help make us humble, to help us. Hopefully, we can make those into strengths. They exist to make us better, and so we should own those, but recognize where they come from. I guess that would be the main theme. I feel very lucky, very blessed to be able to work on this project and so many others that have strengthened my personal testimony to the church. I feel really lucky, very fortunate, very blessed to have had this opportunity. There's no question I've worked really hard. I worked very, very hard at what I do, but it doesn't come close to it in no way reflects the amount of blessings that I've received. I still have I would owe a lifetime for those blessings of hard work. And I feel like I've done a small amount and I've gotten this much in return.
Love it. August 29th is the release date in select theaters, but mainly, across the Wasatch Front for sure. And it sounds like in many of the islands, it'll be available as well. And again, that opening weekend is with any movie that's huge, and it will help with distribution and getting this in more theaters, maybe in the less typical places that you want to anticipate. And I'd encourage people, if you're listening to this and you're excited about the movie as far as how it contributes to the Polynesian Cultural Center and the students there, and maybe you're in the middle of Ohio or something where it's not going to be in theaters, you can go online and order a few tickets for your family and friends along the Wasatch Front and say, hey, I got 6 tickets to go see this movie this weekend, and that'll get people to the theater and really help out a lot. So,
and you can actually request it. I should say that if you go to, I guess you don't have to say www anymore, right? But I'm an old fashioned guy. So go to sharingalohaathemovie.com. And then from that platform, you can see the trailer. You can actually request it in your city.
Oh, cool.
If we get enough requests, even in Ohio, if we get enough requests, we'll make sure that the theaters there see those requests and we'll send it out there. So it is possible to get it. So you can request it in your theater and you can pay it forward and actually buy tickets and encourage people to go. And the website will also have, it also has, even right now, it's maybe a couple of days behind, but it'll show you all the theaters that it's playing in. And then you can go on Cinemark or let's see, the Megaplex website. You can go on any of those and see where they're, just like anybody else. You can go on Fandango and see it. It's now starting to show up as part of the Showtime schedule. So yeah, go opening weekend if you can. And if you can't, go, the weeknight, that opening week. And that the second weekend might be the last weekend it plays, because it's a small film, and these big tentpole movies, these big Spider-Mans and whatnot, they tend to push these out, so they don't last long. So go when you can.
Perfect. Well, Blair, last question I have for you: as you reflect on this project specifically, how has leading this project helped you become a better follower of Jesus Christ?
I think seeing the faith and the spirit of these young Polynesian performers and students at the PCC, they come in with such, you can just see it in their countenance. And so they were an example to me, for sure. We even had a scholarship recipient who was supposed to come and get her scholarship to go home on the Homeward Bound scholarship. And she declined because she did not want to miss her temple session. And she still got the scholarship, but she didn't feel it was necessary to go through all the pomp and circumstances of going up and receiving it. She just humbly accepted it. And so I think what I've learned from that is, I've just learned from these kids. They're amazing kids. They really are. They have faith, and they demonstrate it in their behavior, in their language, in their deportment, in every part of their life. And they're not perfect. They struggle like anybody else, but they are really faithful. And so that was just a faith promoting and faith building for me personally, to rub shoulders with them and to be able to spend the better part of a year capturing their stories.